And this has been my kitchen.
Ah, there it is. My own can of pork and beans. The perfect meal for I had too much to drink, so it's the perfect meal for me. What the? Now that's not fair. There's no pork and beans in my pork and beans. My pork and beans are pork and beanless. What am I gonna do now? I know. I'll get SonicBlu. He's a good cook, and he can go out and buy more pork and beans. Hey, SonicBlu, where are you?
Right here, Bill.
Oh,
My understanding that you wanted this can of pork and beans,
uh-huh.
and my understanding that you're disappointed that you came across an empty can,
Uh-huh.
and am I understanding that you're still hungry for some pork and beans?
Gee, how did you guess?
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't I make pork and beans?
Nobody makes pork and beans. You just open the can and serve. The best meal ever.
Well, people do make pork and beans from scratch,
From scratch. Don't scratch me. I don't like the sound of that.
No, you don't understand. You see, I can make pork and beans from scratch, meaning from recipes and ingredients that we find in the kitchen, and make it ourselves.
You really think you can make that stuff yourself?
I can make it, and I'll tell you what, it'll be 100 times better than what you find in this can of pork and beans.
Bet.
Bet? Okay, what do you want to bet?
All I do is that you cannot reproduce a good can of pork and beans.
And I'll bet you that my pork and beans will whip the hell out of this can.
Bet.
Okay,
And what do you have?
I'll tell you what, I'll put $100 down on the line that says my pork and beans beats the hell out of this can.
Okay, it's a bet. Okay, if you win, you get my dues, and if I win, I get my dues and $100.
That's right.
All right, gang on. Now, how are you gonna cook it?
Well, I'm very glad you asked, Bill. Let's find out. All right, now first of all, to make pork and beans, we need pork. Now you can use about a pound and a half of pork butt, but same type of pork comes in these cans. So we're going to be using canned pork, and I've got a hungry bunch of people to feed. So we're going to double up on a recipe that you would normally cook at home. So we're going to have 3 cans of pork. Or that is 24, 48, 62. So that's about 62 ounces worth of pork, which is double the recipe than what we're making today. You only really need like 32 ounces, but 64 is what we're working with today. Then we're going to need not 1, but 2 medium onions. We're going to dice those up. And then we're going to use 6 cans of vegetarian beans. You can use navy beans, you can use chili beans, you can use pinto beans, any kind of beans you want to, but we're using vegetarian beans because they're closest to what pork and beans are. And then we're going to need about 2/3 of a cup of fancy molasses, or original molasses, and we're going to need some good old Tony Chachere's Creole cooking, because why the heck not? And we're going to need about a teaspoon and a half, maybe 2 teaspoons, about 2 teaspoons of dry mustard. We're also going to need salt and pepper to taste. Worcestershire sauce, we're going to need about 2 tablespoons of that, and about 2/3 cup of ketchup. And for an extra added twist, when we pan sear our pork, I'm going to add liquid smoke. So it's going to have liquid smoke infused pork added to that crock pot, and we're going to put everything together in this crock pot here, and we're going to let it cook for about 3 hours on high. Now if you want to slow cook it a little slower, put it on low and then cook it for about 6 to 7 hours should be good, but we don't have that much time. So I'm hungry now and I want to put it on high and cook and probably, reduce the cooking time by about 2 hours. So we're going to be cooking it for 3 hours, and it's going to be delectable as heck when we open up that and serve tonight's recipe, pork and beans. And Bill, you're about to lose your booze because I'm going to make some really killer pork and beans. We start with a cast iron skillet turned up to 7, and we are going to add vegetable oil to our skillet. First, let's open the vegetable oil. We must break the seal. The safety seal has been broken. And yes, don't mind the mess. We're just gonna put enough down to cover and a little bit extra, and that will be just fine. We're gonna get this nice and hot. While this is getting hot, we're gonna open up our cans of pork. So let's do that. And instead of using canned pork, you can use pork shoulder, pork butt, roast, pork of roast, or any kind of pork you want. But it has to be like roast-like, so you can pull it after you pan sear it. Okay. So it's almost going to be almost like a pulled pork recipe, but we're going to be nice and chunky in there. So just drain out all the juices if you're using canned pork. And we're going to go for our second one. And we're just going to get our pork ready to put in here, and then really, really jazz it up with some liquid smoke infused flavoring. Okay, so can number 2 getting drained. Don't want any pork juice to come between us and that liquid smoke. Number 3 can is now underway. All right. Wow. Look at that pork fat. That is coagulated pork fat. That's been in there for a while. So, at a time like that, all you got to do is remove the pork, give it a good shake.
Poke your finger a little bit in the fat, and that should break the seal.
Yep. Oh, there it comes. Ew! 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 Pork fat! Ew! Ew! Now, a lot of you out there are looking like, this is disgusting. But no. This is normal. This is normal for pork to develop pork fat on the top of the can. And now I know what you're thinking. Why not just use a pork roast? Well, we don't have pork roast. So we have to use the next best thing that we got in the house, which is canned pork. Okay, wash off my hands now of all that pork fat. And now we can see that our oil is starting to bubble. I'm going to put my hand over this and feel if there's any hot heat coming back to it. And a little bit is coming back to it, but that cast iron skillet is going to really... Okay, I think it's ready. That's just a little bit of water. And when it's dancing like that, it's ready. So, whoa, there's juice. Oh no, stand back. It'll calm down in a minute. While we're waiting for it to calm down, I'm just going to break it apart, drop our pork in. Filter number 2. And just kind of crumble it down into our skillet. Filter can number 3. Remove all pork fat. Not the pork, just the fat. Alright, that's good enough. That's 3 cans of canned pork. Now we're going to need something to stir it with, and I need something with a flat end so I can get underneath it and flip it. So now we're going to get that oil all nice and soaked into our pork, and that way get it all nice and seared. Okay, so we're going to get all that pork, and you can break it up however you want to. I'm going to turn this up to as high as possible because we got to get this thing hotter and hotter and hotter than the blazes of hell. And we want to make sure that there's a nice charring going on with our pork. See, now all that pork fat that has attached itself to our pork is now melting in with our oil, and it's mixing together to create a concoction of oil and pork fat, which may slow down the process of your pork's ability to sear or blacken. So, that being the case, I'm just gonna let it sit for a little bit. I'm gonna see how well it blackens underneath, and then I'm gonna wait for some of that oil to cook into it, and then hopefully some of that pork fat will just leach up from the evaporation process, but who knows? Give a little nest. Okay, so it's starting to blacken a little bit. Either that or it's the remnants of the pan itself, but you can never tell. No, I think it's starting to work, but we'll just leave it down for a bit longer. I have it turned up all the way to high, so with a little luck, that should be ready in a moment. But while that's cooking, let's go over here to our slap chop. We are going to get some onion, and I need a knife. It's our knife. And the easiest way to get through your onion is to cut off the ends while it's in its skin. And then lift up, remove any excess loose skin, till you're down to your base onion. Then the first outer layer of the onion you kind of want that off of there, because that's the not very good part. Okay, the second layer as well. So there's 2 layers of the flimsy onion that we don't need, and the crispy part is right underneath there. This is all crispy right over here. So we're getting rid of the first 2 layers of this onion, because we want this part. Okay, so that's going to be too big. So let's cut you in half. And you can make your pieces as big as or small as you want. And I'm just going to do like that. A couple quick chops with the slap chop. And we want some medium-sized pieces. About like that. That would be perfect. We do our second onion the same way we did our first onion. Okay. Perfect. That's what we want. Okay, now take all this stuff. Be careful of our knife. Oh boy. Okay, now gently in the pork. Oh yeah, oh yeah. There we go, there we go. That's what we want, that's what we want. A nice searing.
Did we forget something?
What? What did we forget? Oh yeah. Turn on that. And probably open the door because the fire alarm will probably be going off here in a moment. I still can't see very well because there's tears in my eyes from that onion. That's what we want right there. And look, our pork has already pulled itself. It's self-pulling pork. Now I got pork all over my stovetop, don't I? Oh man. Okay. Go quickly. Have to wipe the eyes because I can't see through the tears from cutting those onions. Now I can see. Okay.
I can see clearly
now the onion's done. Also be careful when you handle the handle of a cast iron skillet. Make sure it's not too hot to handle and that you can handle your skillet. Okay, so when it gets nice and brown like this, and you do want some searing in there. You see that searing? There and there and there. You want seared. You want some searing, you want some of that in there. That gives it texture. That gives your pork texture. And we want color. We want brown. See, perfect, perfect. Look at that. We want that. We want that. Here. Flip and let it set as much as possible. So we're going to flip all that around, let it set as long as possible. Let some of more of that oil and pork fat cook back into our pork. And that way, when we're ready to add our liquid smoke, there'll be plenty of room for it, and it won't get watered down by the oil and the pork fats. If possible, if you have too much of it, you'll want to drain your pork, then return it back to the cast iron skillet, then add your liquid smoke. But this takes a little while to do because you want a good even singeing on your pork. Get a nice singe going. It's going to give it texture, it's going to give it flavor, it's going to cook the heck out of your pork and make it taste less like cat food and more like a meal. Meal fit for a king. And it looks like all of our oil has, in fact, cooked back into our pork. And all we need to do is just let that cook for a little bit more, turn, and then we'll see if we're ready to add that liquid smoke. All right. So hopefully this fan will allow us to rid us of all this smoke because of how hot we have our skillet. And like I said, it needs to be hot in order for this to work. Otherwise you'd be waiting all day. And we ain't got all day. We don't even have barely 3 hours to crock-pot the whole thing. But that's coming together great. Look at that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful pork right there, folks. That is some beautiful pork. Okay. Now for the magic. And I think enough oil. Oh, God, yes. I love the smell of liquid smoke, don't you? We're going to just drizzle a good portion of that liquid smoke, and then we're going to right away mix it in, mix it in, mix it in. The oil that's left over is going to help infuse that liquid smoke flavor into our pork, and we want this to be a nice hickory-ish, smoky-ish flavor in our pork. I'm going to need more. More liquid smoke. We're going to need half the bottle of liquid smoke for this amount of pork. Otherwise, you would need a quarter of a bottle or just 1 to 1.5 cans of canned pork. Or 1/2 of a pork butt shoulder roast or pork shoulder roast. Pork butt or pork shoulder roast. Thank you. I know I can speak words. Now, look at how beautiful this pork is turning out. I am amazed. This is what it's about, folks, and it smells beautiful. It smells millions of times more better adding liquid smoke. And I'm just going to add a little bit more, just a little for good measure. Just a little for good measure.
And true to its word, liquid smoke.
Well, that ain't coming from the liquid smoke. That's what you're smelling right now. That's what you're smelling. You're smelling that nice smoky flavor.
No, I was looking at all the steam.
That comes when you turn this thing up to 8. or 9, or all the way to high, like we have ours. All right. And we're going to let this kind of simmer in a bit, let that liquid smoke kind of circulate. And we're going to come over here and activate our crock pot. We're going to turn it up on high, and let's prepare our beans. Vegetarian beans, 6 cans going in. Now, you're going to want, let's turn this down a little bit more, because now we've gotten to the point where it's singed up beautifully. Now we just need that to simmer. So we're going to turn that back down to low and let the heat kind of just slowly return down to a lower temperature. Now, you're going to want the juices. You're going to want the juices. Do not drain your beans. And I'll tell you why. Because you need that juice to help thicken your sauce. So that juice with those beans are going to help thicken the sauce. And you want that sauce in there. You want that juice in there to help thicken everything. And it's just going to add more to that flavor. All right. So this is 6 cans worth. Remember, we're doubling up the recipe. So normally at home, you'd only do 3 cans and maybe 1.5 cans of pork. But we're using doubling up the recipe because we got a lot of hungry mouths to feed, and they are hungry for some pork and beans. Okay. 2 more cans to go. Okay. I'm going to stir that all together. Next, we're going to need 2/3 cup of ketchup. Let's get 2/3 cup of ketchup.
Bill just chilling, watching.
Bill's just watching. I don't know what's in his brain, but he's just kicking back. Oh, Bill, that's disgusting.
Don't look at me, I didn't do it.
Yeah, you did. I heard you. Okay, that's about 2/3, maybe a little bit more of ketchup. Here's your spoon to help it along. Fantastic. Give that a stir. Until you don't see any globs of ketchup anymore, and now you've got a nice red coloring to your pork and bean sauce. Ketchup is done. Next, and I'm going to eyeball this, we're going to need about 2 tablespoons of dry mustard. It's about 1. And a little bit more, and that looks like about 2. There we go. Perfect. Mix that in. And this dry mustard is going to give it, as I destroy everything, that's going to give it kind of a mustardy flavor without the liquid mustard. Okay, there we go. Let me get back up there. Okay, next, Worcestershire sauce. And I'm going to eyeball this again. We're going to need about 2 tablespoons. That's about 1. That's about 2. There we go. There we go. Okay, not too much, not too little. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the magic ingredient, molasses. Now, molasses is a prime ingredient in making barbecue sauce, but it's also a prime ingredient for pork and beans. So we're going to use 2/3 of the jar. And how many ounces is this? 12 fluid ounces? No, we'll use the whole jar. I thought it was bigger than that, folks, but we're going to use 1 whole jar of molasses, or otherwise you would just use half of the jar. And look how fast that molasses is flowing out of there. Look how fast that's going. And it's January, folks, so this is molasses in January. Look how fast it's coming out of that jar. Look at that.
Oh, not big. Spoon too big.
Spoon is too big for that jar, but that's okay. That's okay. We got enough molasses in there. And now your sauce is becoming to resemble the color that we need. Now, what's next? Tony Chachere's. We're going to add this to taste, so there's no real measurement for Tony Chachere's. So we're just going to give this a little dusting of Tony Chachere's and give us a nice Creole touch. Oh yes, now look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Doesn't it look delicious? Well, not yet. But it's starting to look nice and good. Now, we're going to add the pepper. This is freshly ground pepper. And we're going to add this to taste.
Got a light on it.
Yes, this is my fancy pepper grinder. No effort. Just pitch a button and let it go. And I like a lot of pepper, and this is a lot of pork and beans we're making, so I'm going to need a lot of pepper. Next, we're going to need a dash of salt. Again, added to flavor. I'm just going to use a dash so that it helps prevent, the taste of blandness. We're going to just get a pinch or two of salt. Maybe 3, because 4 pinches of salt should do, because we're doubling up on the recipe. I think it's about 3 pinches. And 1 more. Good. That's 4 pinches of salt.
But wait, where does the onions come in?
The onions are going to get cooked after the pork is done. So when the pork is done, we're going to add it to our crock pot, and we're going to cook the onions till they're translucent. And then once they're translucent, we're going to add them to our crock pot, and then you're going to see some magic happening when we combine everything together. Oh, perfect. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. That's what I want, my darlings. That is what we want. That is what we want. And now, darling, 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 pork by me. Oh, there's pork by me. Oh, there's pork now. Pork by me. Okay, now that's a terrible parody. Starting to come together, but I think we're going to need more liquid smoke.
When's that smell-o-vision going to come in?
I don't know, but I think I've used up the entire jar of liquid smoke, so if that ain't enough, folks, we may have to go to the store and get another bottle, because I only picked up 1. That's okay. That's okay. You're going to get a nice smoky flavor anyway, because we added Worcestershire sauce to the mix. And that's going to give it a nice...
That was in the crock pot.
That was in the crock pot. Everything's going to meld together. But we're just infusing our pork with the flavor of that liquid smoke. That's the purpose of cooking the heck out of it. And not only giving it a texture, but also infusing the liquid smoke flavor into our pork. Okay, that's all there is to it. Now, handle should be good enough, but for good measure, I'm going to grab a towel, wrap it around there, and then all of that pork, no, that's too heavy for me, so I'm going to spoon it into our crock pot full of pork and bean goodness.
Do we have enough room?
We'll have enough room. We'll have plenty of room and lots of pork and beans to eat. Look at that. I'm just going to dump that all in there. See, now cans of pork and beans, you open that up and you see mostly beans and the sauce. Where's the pork? You know that little white slab inside that can of pork and beans? That's the pork.
Like that tiny little piece of pork fat.
Piece of pork fat. That is what they call pork in your pork and beans. No? Well, according to Ren and Stimpy, it's the queen bean. And the other beans are the other beans that serve her. The worker beans. We're just going to fold it in because we are really almost at that top there, and we're just going to kind of fold that in a little by little. Very carefully fold it in. We're going to fold it in. And now that we've folded our pork into our beans with the sauce, it is time for the onions to be cooked.
We got some escapees.
Yeah, I know. I'll get them. So while we still have heat going, we're going to take all of our onions that we just diced. Okay. And
Need longer arms.
I need more arms. Okay. A little bit more. And a little touch of all. Just a little. Not that much. This will just help cook the onions a lot faster. helps them to get more translucent. Translucent. I don't know why I can't say that very well.
You can't say it tonight.
Translucent. I can't say translucent for some reason. But anyway, if you like chunky onion, make your pieces bigger. If you like them smaller, make them smaller. There is no rules. As you can see, I got big pieces and little pieces and medium-sized pieces. There are no rules in cutting and dicing your onion. There we go. Give it a little stir there and see how well our buddies are doing. And that sauce, look at that sauce. It's already starting to thicken up, folks, from that pork. Well, we haven't even started yet, folks. We just only turned it up on high, but we haven't set our timer or anything. Okay, onions starting to become translucent. I'm just waiting for that big giant piece there to become a little softer. But the beauty part of cooking your onion in the same pan that you cooked your pork, remember when we had traces of pork all over the bottom of that thing? Well, the onion is going to pick up all of that. So when you dump your onion in, you're also dumping in what you couldn't dump in from your pork. So it's all of that stuff is going to go. Nothing is wasted here. Okay. We are almost ready for the crock pot. Now we don't want to cook these too much because you got to understand these are going into a crock pot where they're going to be cooked even more. So we just want to cook them to where they're starting to get translucent there. Otherwise I'd cook the heck out of them and like give them a singeing too, but we don't want to do that with our onion. Okay, into the crock pot it goes. There we go. Okay, and now for the final stir. Yes, the final mix. I'm going to make sure that that is all nice and mixed together, and this is looking beautiful, folks. Have you ever seen a can of pork and beans look this beautiful? My sources say no, you have not seen a can of pork and beans look this beautiful or smell this beautiful. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is how to make a good pork and beans.
Look at the color of that pork already.
Son. This is gonna be one mighty fine Louisiana style pork and beans, I guarantee. Son. And that's all there is to it. Now we're gonna take our lid, cover it up, and let it fall. I don't care.
Let it fall.
Let it fall. 3 hours is what we're going to set the timer for. And when 3 hours comes up, let's a little bit more. 3.5. 3.5 hours. It's going to be 3.5 to 4 hours of cooking time on high, or if you really want to slow cook it, 7 to 8 hours on low. But we got it on high, so we're going to only cook it for 3.5 to 4 hours, around that time frame. So if your taste buds can wait for 3 hours, or 3.5 hours, or 4 hours, however long it takes. Since we're using canned pork, probably only 3 hours, closer to the 3 hour mark than the 4 hour mark. If you're using pork ham or pork roast, you're going to want to cook it for a little longer because the consistency, it's got to really soak in all those juices, and it takes a while for all of the magic to happen. And the thicker that your meat is, the more it's going to need to sit in there and soak it all in. And then just everything's going to meld together beautifully. The flavors are just going to pop right into your mouth. And magnifique. So we'll see you in about 3.5 hours. We'll do a taste test, and we'll then see who wins the contest between whose pork and beans are better than whose. And 3.5 hours later, there it is. The pork and beans have been revealed. Look at all that sauce in there. Look at all the beans. Look at all the beef, or pork rather. Look at all that pork. It just pulled itself apart even further because that sauce that soaks into the pork has no other choice but to make it good and tender, delicious. The onions are in there. Oh, looks heavenly, smells heavenly. I say let's get some of this stuff out and taste it. Oh yes, pork and beans, baby. This is how we do pork and beans right here in the kitchen of Cooking with SonicBlu. And look at this. Oh, amazing, amazing, amazing. Look at that. Oh, it smells great. It smells great, it looks great, and I bet it's going to even taste great. I'm going to fill it up here.
The thick treatment of liquid smoke smell still in there.
Yeah, it smells like a regular smokehouse in here, folks. I wish you could smell what we're smelling here. That smokehouse flavor and that smokehouse aroma just going at it. But now, let's see how it stacks up to a can of pork and beans. There's a piece of onion there too. I want to get that in there. Get some beans, get some pork going. And now the ultimate taste test. That's good. That is so good. Oh, this is far better than what you will find in any can of pork and beans, folks. And know that you've done it all by yourself. Isn't it amazing what a little bit of creativity, ingenuity, and a lot of patience in a crock pot would do? But don't just take my word for it. See how Bar Hoppin' Bill likes it.
Is it ready yet?
It's ready.
Oh my god. That's not pork and beans.
Yes, it is pork and beans.
It looks like soup.
It's not soup.
And it's not chili?
It's not chili.
Are you sure it's not Sloppy Joe's?
It's not Sloppy Joe's. It's pork and beans. Pork and beans. And you're going to enjoy it.
Do I have to enjoy it?
That's up to you, Bill. Give a good sniff.
Okay. I'm convinced that this will taste better than my pork and beans.
And that means you owe me some drinky drinkies.
Alright, I'll put it on my tab.
No, there's no tab here.
But you don't expect that I tell you now.
Yeah, now.
But you shouldn't be cooking and drinking.
Cooking and drinking? You shouldn't be drinking at all. That's a job for me now.
I'll get you back later. I get paid next week.
No, you don't get paid next week. Come on, Bill, you're holding out. I know you got your secret stash somewhere.
Alright, listen, I'll get you back tomorrow.
Tomorrow. First thing in the evening tomorrow.
Alright, tomorrow. Now, I'm gonna take this bowl of pork and beans.
No, you're not. I'm gonna take this bowl of pork and beans.
No, I'm gonna take
it.
I'm gonna take
No, I'm gonna take it. Bill, let go of my pork and beans.
It's not pork and beans.
It's my pork and Bill. No. You know, I really hate for Bar Hoppin' Bill to be without his booze. So, Bill, what do you say we call this bet a draw? You go and get drunk, and I will eat my pork and beans.
Sounds good. Wait a minute. That doesn't sound... That means I don't get any pork and beans.
That's right.
That means I get to drink.
That's right.
But I don't get any pork and beans.
That's right.
But I get to drink. What do I do?
What do you usually do?
Drink. That's it. Drink. I'll see you later.
And then off he goes to Drinky Wonderland. And now I'm going to take my pork and beans and I'm going to get out of here. This is SonicBlu Darkfold for Cooking with SonicBlu, saying that anything can be possible just by putting your mind to it and look at what you can come up with in your kitchen. Now, remember, this stuff is really good stuff, and if you don't believe me, try it yourself, because if you're not cooking good, you're not eating good. Oh, one other thing. One thing I forgot to mention. In this recipe, I have also included 2/3 cup of brown sugar. I totally forgot to add the brown sugar. And what ended up happening was while waiting for this to cook, I went on VR chat. And I met up with somebody there that we got talking about food and recipes. And he mentioned brown sugar. And I'm like, oh yeah, brown sugar would be good in that recipe. Wait a minute. I forgot to add brown sugar to my pork and beans. So I'll be right back. Okay, don't go anywhere. So I take off my VR headset, put down my controllers. I jump right back into the kitchen, grab the brown sugar. I put in 2/3 cup of brown sugar in there, mixed it up really well. And fortunately, it was like we had about 2.5 hours to go before this was ready. So it was a perfect time. But I wanted to mention that. I did forget to put in the brown sugar, but the recipe does call for brown sugar. So in a normal recipe, 1/3 cup of brown sugar to all of this. But since we're doubling up on the recipe, I added 2/3. And man, does it really make a difference. So add a little brown sugar to your pork and beans, and you'll just discover how sweet it is. Anyway, we now return you to your regularly scheduled Opa Pets broadcasting, and I return myself to my dinner. 3 to 4 hours on low, or 7 hours on, I'm sorry, 3.5 to 4 hours on low. On high, so you me, I can't speak today. So,
I would say something from a certain YouTube poop, but that's not PG-13.